Hey guys! Good day! Or night. I feel like me, I like to watch a lot of videos at night, so time isn't relevant. Ooh, I'm almost segueing. It's actually a horrible segue. I watched Lost again. If you don't know, Lost was a incredibly popular TV series. I think it's about 6 seasons, 120 episodes, I'm pretty sure. Should have checked that before I started this. It's one of my favorite TV series of all time. And it holds a very special place in my heart. Now, I say this is the second time I watched it. Technically, I missed one episode because my parents watched it without me, and then they just told me to kind of review what the episode was, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. Basically, I've watched the series twice. And let me tell you, it is one of those series that is so much better the second time. I mean, the first time is kind of cool because you're like a little confused, a little bit like, ooh, what's going on here? And there's a lot more mystery to it. But the second time, if you're like, I watched it like years in part, so I still had a lot of that mystery, but yet I was still clued in enough to kind of understand what was going on, so it made it a little bit more fun. So we're going to talk about the show today and how I feel about it, and I want you to tell me how you feel about it. With Lost, it's you can center it on two different things. You can center it on just the plot of what's going on, or you could really center it on the characters. I tend to really center it on the characters. Because the plot of the show, there are some holes that you need to fill. Watching it the second time, I had a lot of holes filled. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. I get why they did that now. And then there was a couple of things I'm like, did they just mess that up? But one of the things you'll first learn when you're starting to watch Lost is there really are no quote-unquote bad characters. I may argue differently, but I think one of the main themes of the show is the fact that we are all flawed. There is good and bad in all of us, and it's what we choose to act upon that really determines who we are, and even when we mess up, we are able to still be good people. Now this will get spoilery, but I don't know how else to talk about the show without doing that, sorry. But yeah, the first season or two is basically looking back upon these people's lives before they landed on this island, and you see all the horrible things they've done. But as you get to know the characters, you can't help but love them despite the things that they've done, and I think it's a really good message of empathy. Personally, it opened my eyes, especially when I watched it years ago as a young teenager, that people that do things that are not good, if you want to take Kate for example, she murdered a man, but yet Kate was still a good person. She happened to do something that you could debate was right or wrong considering her circumstance. I'm not going to debate that. But I will say that I still think Kate is a good person at heart. Or you want to take something maybe more extreme, like Sayid, who was literally a torturer, and someone that you would think is the worst kind of human out there. But Sayid is one of the kindest, and he listens, he's kind. I don't know a good way to describe him, but I love Sayid. He's one of the many characters that I treasure. I love them through their good things and their bad things, because all of that has made them who they are. Also, another thing that I loved about the show, and I realized it the first time I watched it, but even more so the second time as I was older and I learned, is the amount of biblical references in the show. There's a very particular moment I remember Locke talking to Jack, and they're talking about faith versus science, basically. Jack is someone that goes off of what he knows to be, and Locke is someone that goes on what he believes could be. And as a Christian, that is exactly what we do. We know what is in front of us, but we also have to have faith in what we can't see. And there's a lot of that theme throughout the show. I really wish I could remember all the different references in the show, but I can't because there are so many. And if you go through and watch it one or two times or whatever, especially with your knowledge of the Bible and whatnot, and watch the show, it is immersive because you're like, oh, I see what they did there. Obviously, a lot of this is brought up more clearly with people like Mr. Echo, who teaches Bible stories basically to Charlie in some instances. And these are the sorts of things that interest me, so it's partially another layer of as to why I like the show so much. Also, another thing a lot of people don't tend to like about the show, if you're going to watch it like any other linear show out there, is the fact that it does bring in time travel into it, and I enjoy time travel stuff. I mean, I'm a Doctor Who fan. I like time travel. And I think the reason I like time travel as a piece in writing is not necessarily, once again, not necessarily for plot reasons, but for character development reasons. One of my favorite examples of that is the story of Benjamin Linus and him as a child versus him as an adult, and you see why he became the man he became. Segueing to characters, I have, obviously, everyone knows my favorite character is Charlie Pace. There's a lot of reasons as to why he's my favorite character, but a lot of it I think boils down to, I think he's one of the most, one of those characters that you can really see develop. And over a very short period of time, relatively. Of course, he didn't have to deal with all that time travel stuff. Because you saw him land on the island, hopeless, feeling unloved and unappreciated by mostly his brother, severely addicted to drugs, and you watch him change into a man that's willing to sacrifice himself for those around him. And I think that's one of the reasons Charlie was so in love and so protective of Claire, is he finally found someone who seemed to love him for him, and someone he thought he could help. And in the end, he was able to help. And I think it's a very sweet story. It's my favorite love story on the Lost Island. Sadly, Charlie had a very short time on the show in regards to the main plot, but I don't know, he always made a big impact on me. There's really not any characters I dislike. I know that sounds very strange, but every character is there for a reason, mostly. There was, I think, 2 filler characters, but I don't really understand why they were there. But anyway, if you remember the Diamonds episode, that was a weird episode. But overall, even the bad characters are there for some good. Some characters that just stood out to me personally that I just adored were Alex. And I wonder why I like her. Hugo, of course. Who doesn't love Hugo? Everybody loves Hugo. Claire, obvious reasons I think. She's just a sweetheart and she goes through a lot of crap. Saeed, I really liked Saeed. Mr. Echo, I adore Mr. Echo, and I really hated that he had such a small time span. Sawyer, Sawyer really got on my nerves in the beginning, but I think why I like Sawyer is kind of the same reason I like Charlie, only Charlie was never really a jerk. It took Sawyer longer than Charlie, but he grew a lot as a character throughout the show. I really liked Rose. She was a very minor character, but I really liked her. I love Desmond. Of course you have to love Desmond. He's Scottish and he's awesome, and he kind of saves the day in a weird way. Daniel Faraday is also a big favorite of mine. I mean, he's so quirky and he's so awkward and intelligent, and he's very talented, and he gets stuck in a lot of sucky situations. And Richard is one of those characters that's kind of sprinkled throughout the series until the very end you really get to know him. And he's one of those, he's kind of a constant, and I'm not trying to be all weird time travel-y on you, but he's just always there, and he's just comforting to be around. I'm like, if I see Richard on the screen, I'm like, I just feel comforted that he's there. Also, I wouldn't say they're favorite characters, but I really appreciated them in the show and for their different roles, Jacob and Benjamin Linus. Jacob, I think, is pretty obvious. I mean, he was kind of the reason everything happened. But once again, he was a very good man, and he had a very long and kind of sad and complicated life. But I always felt he was doing what he thought was best. And then Ben. Ben, there were so many times, I'm not a violent person, but yeah, I'd want to punch Ben sometimes. Don't know if I would have done it. Don't want to find out. But yeah, he's by no means a lovable character, but when you learn about his past and what he thinks and how he thinks, he just grows to be someone that, I don't know if the word like is the proper word, but there's something about him that's intriguing, and you almost feel some sympathy towards. So yeah, Lost as a series has rough spots. I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, I think there's things that could have been executed better, better explained, better planned. But at the end of the day, I still love it, and I like how they end it. I know a lot of people probably don't, but especially watching it the second time, I'm like, this ending makes sense to me. It just does. I could tell my parents were a little bit iffy after they watched the last episode, but I hope in time they'll grow to see what I think it's trying to explain. Yeah, I highly recommend it if you are someone who's open-minded enough to stick through the rough spots and to deal with some of the plot holes, to deal with some of the sadness of losing characters. I was so proud of myself. I think I only cried once the second time. I think it was during Charlie's part again. But yeah, if you watch it, just stay open-minded and, you know, follow your characters. The plot is very complicated, but for me at least, as long as some of my favorite characters were on the screen, I was happy. I felt like I was along for the ride with them, and I needed to hold their hand as they went through this difficult time. I get way too attached to them. I just really do. So yeah, I could do this for a lot of different things if you were interested in my views on different movies and shows that I have watched. Just, yeah, let me know if you want me to do this again. I'm a little bit rambly, I'm sorry. It's just, especially with a show like this, so much goes on in it that it's hard to put into context how you feel about it. Also, if you have watched it, tell me who were your favorite characters, what were your favorite plot twists. Okay, I'll stop rambling. For now, at least. It's not like a lifelong promise or anything. God bless, and peace out. We've gotta go, bye!